πιστεύεις?
What are these mysterious and stunning shapes etched into the wheat fields of England and other nations around the world? Are these crop circles, as they have come to be known, some sort of communication? Communication, perhaps, from another world? There are scientists who tell us that mathematics is the language of the universe. Could it be that these precise geometric designs are, in fact, trying to tell us something? Some believe these intricate patterns could be a warning, but a warning of what and from whom? We will attempt to find the answers to these and a host of other questions when we return. In the late 1970s, something truly amazing began to happen in the crop-rich countryside of England. Reports of circles being pressed into standing crops began to trickle in from the agricultural areas where much of England's cereal grains are grown. They were just simple circles to begin with, but as the frequency of the reports increased, so did the size and intricacy of the markings in the fields. What's more, in spite of the fact that some of these circles were so large they could only be fully viewed from high in the air, they had the disturbing quality of appearing fully formed overnight. Who or what could noiselessly and in the dark cut huge images into a field of living grain without damaging the crop and leave a precise geometric impression only fully visible from an airplane? There were many people who thought that question was being answered by other reports that began coming in about the same time. Reports of silvery discs flying or hovering low over the open countryside, and apparently these objects were seen in great number.
The town of Warminster has gained the reputation as the UFO capital of England. The sheer number of sightings in that area since 1964 has been nothing short of staggering. One particular phenomenon we've been watching with interest has been the sightings of a spherical object that seems to glow amber, orange, or gold. There have been quite a number of sightings of that kind, of this object.
But those sightings were often only the beginning of the mystery. According to eyewitness accounts, with the first rays of the next morning's sun came astonishing evidence of the previous night's encounter with the unknown, and so far unexplained. Someone or something left an area of the field flattened, pressed down into perfect geometric shapes.
The crops aren't cut, they're not broken. They've been carefully and systematically swirled flat to the ground.
Over the years, these patterns have proven to be more than just random design. They are, in fact, perfect circles, ovals, or circles with rings, and sometimes circles, rings, and satellites. So we are left with a haunting possibility that if there is a connection between the circular objects and the mysterious imprints left in the fields, these so-called crop circles may be the most positive evidence yet of alien visitors to our planet. But can we be sure the crop circles and UFOs are related?
Almost from the beginning, crop circles have appeared in association with the report of aerial phenomena. In the most extreme cases, people have reported beams of light touching ground level, where crop circles have been later discovered, or indeed in many cases the little balls of orange light dancing over the field, and on occasions literally appearing in the fields. These sightings have often been followed by discoveries of the crop circles.
This is, of course, important circumstantial evidence of a connection between the crop markings and the aerial phenomena. But it is only circumstantial. Are there other reasons to believe these symbols in the fields were made by UFOs?
The characteristics of the crop circles, the bent stems, and the lack of damage, the idea that they've been produced by some kind of scanner, which we haven't got, which I discovered from my research, and the fact that their timings related to the UFO activity all point to an intelligence which is not human.
And I'm convinced that the wisdom and skill and understanding embodied in these formations is of a very high order indeed.
Could it be that the answer will be found in sites like these, where witnesses claim UFOs have landed?
There have been a number of ground traces that have been found both here in Pennsylvania and throughout the world. Some of these traces indicate circular areas, ring-shaped areas, ovals, irregular sites. In some cases, you have the top of the area that's been burnt and charred. In some cases, soil or plant life has been removed.
J. Allen Hynek, the father of modern UFO research, reported witnessing a flying saucer landing site in Canada that was suspiciously like the classic crop circle. All 5 of these objects rose straight up as though on a signal, and where each one had been was a 9-foot circle of matted down grass. Does this mean that all such strange circles in the grass have been created by a UFO? Or is there another, more likely explanation that would describe all of these phenomena?
The official explanation from the British government is that these crop circles are actually formed by the wind. Well, presumably we are led to believe that this is a rigorous wind system which etches the crop circles into the fields. The British government's whirlwind theory appears to have been accepted by everybody concerned, particularly, I think, the public. But bearing in mind, it in no way fulfills the mechanism which actually forms a whirlwind, i.e. they are formed by thermal inductance and appear during the daylight and or in the lee of a hill. In southern England, we have very few hills, and most of the crop circles appear at night.
Wind, however, is not the only weather factor that has been suggested as a natural cause for the formation of crop circles. The BLT Research Team Incorporated, a group of scientists headquartered in the U.S. but doing research worldwide on this phenomenon, has a slightly different idea.
The most reasonable hypothesis that we've been able to come up with is that an atmospheric plasma, an air mass of highly charged electrical particles, is descending down towards the Earth's surface, and when it impacts in a crop field, what you get is in fact a crop circle. A lightning discharge is another example of a plasma form. The northern lights are another one. Science until recently did not think that plasmas came down as low as the Earth's actual surface, but not too many years ago they discovered sprites, and sprites occur at 6 miles up. So there's more and more evidence that perhaps plasmas can in fact impact the Earth's surface.
So are we to believe that a whirlwind, a wind of any kind, can form a pattern like this? Look at the way the grain has been woven and these precisely well-deformed edges. Well, no whirlwinds did these things, and it's absolute madness to pretend they did.
Natural phenomena cannot explain crop circles because they simply started 20-odd years ago. Mother Nature is not best known for inventing new phenomena.
I don't believe they can all be created through natural phenomena, simply because I've witnessed a number of first-hand anomalies on bits of electrical equipment that wouldn't be caused by just randomly downed crop or shapes. One experience I had a few years ago, I had a mobile phone that I was trying to use in a crop circle, and it completely refused to work at all. And I went to the edge of the crop circle. You know, at the time I thought it had been zapped or something, and I held it like this, and it went up to full signal strength, and I brought it back in, and it just went completely no signal. And I repeated this. At the time I was fairly sceptical, and I repeated this a number of times and literally went right round the exact shape of the crop circle, and it completely refused to work inside, and yet it worked full signal strength outside the circle. So that was one event that, you know, personally convinced me there was something worth investigating.
The sheer number of circles being reported every year has forced many governments to take note of these amazing occurrences. But what have governments, by and large, done to identify the source of the circles? Could it be the entire phenomenon has been the result of clever fakery? And since no one appears to be gaining great fame and fortune for their effort, why would anyone bother to do it? No one denies that the artistry and geometric precision of the crop circles are truly amazing. The answer that seems to elude every question is, how on earth can it be done on such a grand scale, in so many different places, and always in a single night? Does this mean that UFOs, piloted by some sort of intelligence, are the only answer? Actually, there are a variety of other theories about where the crop markings come from. One of the most inventive explanations suggests the markings are being made by the satellite-based weapon system developed for the American Strategic Defense Initiative, or SDI.
There is a theory that the SDI program, the government themselves, are actually employing high-tech equipment in space to etch into the fields of southern England and in other parts of the world patterns of this kind. There are two reasons why I don't believe it's even a starter. We had reports of this phenomena in 1946 in the same field as we have them today. We didn't have the technology up there when they were first appearing. And the second, I think the most major point, is that these patterns could be laid into the fields of secure areas of military establishments. We have large areas in central southern England. It'd be very simple to lay them in those areas. But these are appearing in public areas. Some of them are actually crossing major highways. I cannot begin to conceive of any Western government employing such technology in such an irresponsible manner.
Technology can't possibly explain the existence of crop circles, because while the technology might be available, the social backup to that technology is impossible to conceive. Who would spend fortunes on a technology that bends over the stalks of crop?
There are even those who have put the theory forward that these things are formed by mating hedgehogs or porcupines rolling around in the field.
Are any of these theories any more credible than the suggestion that the crop circles are formed by UFOs or some kind of aerial technology? Of course, all of them overlook a much simpler possibility. Could these patterns just be a matter of an outright hoax? In 1990, two Englishmen came forward with a confession. They had, they told the world, personally created the crop circles. The men, Doug Bauer and David Charley, were even eager to demonstrate their technique for cameras. The method was simplicity itself. Put a board under one foot, attached to a rope to hold it against your foot, tie yourself to a center point, and begin walking around in circles. Nothing to it. But if Doug and Dave did do all of the crop circles as they claimed, how did they get from England to America to Russia and back? How did they make as many as 15 circles in one night? How did they overlap the stalks without breaking them? If indeed this is the answer to the origin of the crop circles, how on earth did they do it?
Remember in the fall of 1991 when these two gentlemen in southern England were trotted out on the world media as the explanation for the crop circle mystery? Two guys who claim they did it all. And for some reason, the worldwide network media accepted that as an explanation.
In 1991, Doug and Dave claimed to have created all the crop circles, and I for one don't believe this claim. I've interviewed Doug myself, and you ask him certain questions and you'll get the wrong answers. And not only did they claim a number of crop circles, and we've got up to 30 logged on one night, as appearing all around the country, which they couldn't physically have travelled to. But also various patterns and things, details on the ground that we found don't tally in with their story. And it's interesting to see that the media completely went for this story, flashed it around the world and didn't, published it as all a hoax. And no one's taken the chance to actually go and research this and actually look into the truth of what really happened.
According to them, they had boards which they pushed down across the crane, and they just kept walking around in circles or rings or whatever until they'd made the shapes they wanted. The whole thing was all a big practical joke.
There simply is no way that just two men could have possibly constructed all of these patterns, appearing on occasions 15 per day, without getting caught at it. Hoaxers went out during the middle of the night just to make this. How on earth would they have possibly constructed a pattern like Barbary Castle during the shortest night of the British summer? It would have taken a team of hoaxers days to have constructed this, and it appeared simply overnight.
What people don't realize is that before 1991 and since 1991, that there have been scientists, biophysicists, who have been studying plants from formations in England, Canada, the United States, Australia, and other parts of the world, and have found that there are fundamental biochemical and biophysical changes at the respiratory cell level and the cell pit level of plants that cannot be hoaxed.
Crop circles like UFOs are a worldwide phenomenon. The U.S. and Canada, Australia, Japan, they're all over the place. I heard some reports about them in the Soviet Union as well, in the former Soviet Union. They're a worldwide phenomenon, and the idea that two old English barflies are flying all over the world creating these things is patently ridiculous.
And there's another aspect to the circles that suggests, shall we say, more comprehensive planning. Many crop circle experts say that the markings in the fields are perfect geometric figures, often accurate to less than 1/4 of an inch.
The difference between wind damage, hoaxing, and genuine patterns, the wind damage is very obvious. It's just a very random falling of the crop in the fields. There's no particular structure to it. The hoaxing ones very often look absolutely brilliant from the air, but when you put them up on a computer, you can see that the geometry is inaccurate. They just never get it correct. In the genuine ones, the geometry is awesome. They may be 1,000 foot in diameter. It's absolutely flawless. It is hugely accurate.
Yet, is it not possible that all of the crop markings really are hoaxes?
In 1993, a crop circle making contest was held, sponsored by the Guardian newspaper, which is a kind of equivalent of Sirius newspaper of the New York Times. It was under the supervision of Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, a scientist. And at the end of the day, the 11 contestants, or at least 4 or 5 of them, produced reasonable imitations of crop circles. But what does this prove? If I gave you a $20 bill and convinced you that I had hoaxed it, would you forever refuse to take American currency? Does this invalidate the US economy? I don't think so.
Even if Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley didn't make all of the circles, might not the real culprit be hundreds of hoaxers all over the world?
People that believe crop circles were made by human beings are overlooking some very important features of the crop circles. They are interwoven and intricately laid, not at all the way that they would be crushed to the ground if people stamped them.
Chemical analysis of grain from a field where a crop circle had appeared suggests another change that no human hands could have made.
Crop samples from formations in England, New York State, and Vancouver, British Columbia were subjected to some kind of energy which rapidly heated the plants. Even more puzzling are the soil changes in a large oval shape found August 1st near Beckhampton, England. Analysis by nuclear systems designer Marshall Dudley and Duke University student Michael Carost revealed the presence of 10 unusual and short-lived radionuclides in the samples that are not found in normal plants. These are not naturally occurring radionuclides. They must be synthesized in either cyclotrons or fusion reactors. Dudley and Carost said, finding such isotopes in soil samples from a rural England field is profoundly surprising. There's a complex of energies that are being focused on these plants, and that implies some kind of an advanced technology. If there's an advanced technology being applied to cereal crops worldwide, including rice paddies in Japan, the big question is whose technology and why?
In 1993, shortly after the Perseid meteor shower, a formation occurred in Wiltshire, England, at a place called Chur Hill. The formation had a glaze or a coating on some of the plants and some of the tiny swirls. What we discovered was that this was absolutely pure iron, and we realized that what we were looking at was a deposit of probably meteoritic dust. Since then, we have begun looking in the soils very aggressively, and we find multiple cases, in fact the majority of cases, where we have 50 to 100 micron diameter beads. These are tiny little spheres of pure iron deposited inside the crop circles and not outside.
Every plant on Earth has a distinctive energy pattern, and we have looked closely and compared the energy pattern of plants inside the crop circle with those outside as controls in the general area. And this was a non-conventional plant analysis process, but they nonetheless secured a starch crystal from a single plant inside a single crop circle, and discovered that looking through a microscope, the lattice structure was very different to anything they had ever seen before.
Most people think that applying science to mysteries will dispel them. In this case, it's making it a better mystery than it was to begin with.
The best scientific evidence to date that I'm getting, this is a 3-year study on changes in the hormone levels. We test people before they go into a crop circle, and we test them again after they've been inside. And we're seeing dramatic changes in the pineal gland. The melatonin level is rising. Also the thyroid, that seems to be quite dramatically affected. So do the adrenals. Now, the adrenals maybe aren't too surprising because they are a flight and fight mechanism, so they're going to react very quickly. But the thyroid is quite another thing. This indicates that not only is the pineal gland affected, but also the pituitary gland, and this indicates that our whole endocrine system is being affected, and our endocrine system really dictates our emotional and physical behavior. This is very important stuff.
What we found with scientific instruments is that there are specific sound frequencies which are measurable, which are actually affecting the brainwave pattern of people who enter these formations. This is why when people go into crop circles, they could see visions, or they have a heightened sense of awareness, precisely because it's those frequencies which are affecting them.
Converting into music certainly gives some interesting results. Seems to indicate that there's almost some sort of communication or something embedded in the crop circle, other than just a random flattening or hoax shapes or whatever. And if there's a message, I think the music could be a key to decoding this message.
Applying science to crop circle research is not attempted by everyone, but in the case of the BLT research team, it is their primary focus.
The way the work is done is that we take many hundreds of samples inside the crop circles and an equal number or slightly less control samples outside. We then compare the two groups of plants to see what we see. What we find are enlarged cell wall pits in the crop circle plants, lengthened nodes, markedly lengthened, sometimes 200 and some % over the control nodes. We find holes blown out at the nodes, which we never see in the standing crop outside. And we also get germination abnormalities.
If the crop markings do form mathematically precise geometric symbols, and if the plants inside have been laid in extremely complex patterns, and the organic structure of the plants has been chemically altered, have we finally found indisputable evidence of some superhuman force at work?
There's definite evidence that there's a very high intelligence behind the crop circles, simply because some of the mathematical shapes and symbols that we're getting in the crops, when you actually analyse them, they're actually starting to give sort of new or continuing science.
For me, the crop circles are an awakening of sorts. They're a reminder that we're part of a higher process in the universe. We're not alone, which also corresponds to a lot of Hopi prophecies, a lot of Aboriginal prophecies, and they're all coinciding at this particular point in time.
I think the message crop circles are giving us is for everyone to think for themselves and come to their own conclusions and investigate things rather than just taking verbatim what they read in textbooks, read in the newspapers or see on television.
We may not yet be sure who the real crop circle makers are, and we may not yet know how or why the crop circles were made. But if there is a secret message in crop circles, we may be very close to decoding that message. Mostly, the experts seem to agree that the message is good. Could it be that this is just the good news we've been waiting for? News we need badly, and just in time.
Προσοχή παρακαλώ. Οι συσκευασίες που θα ταξιδέψουν με το μπλε κάδο ανακύκλωσης να προσέλθουν στην πύλη επιβίβασης καθαρές από υπολείμματα. Παρακαλούνται όσοι συνοδεύονται από σακούλες να βγουν από αυτές πριν μπουν στον κάδο και οι συνοδοί να επιβιβαστούν χωριστά. Ο μπλε κάδος αναχωρεί για τα κέντρα διαλογής σε λίγα λεπτά. Σας ευχαριστούμε που επιλέξατε τον μπλε κάδο για την ανακύκλωσή σας και σας ευχόμαστε ένα ευχάριστο ταξίδι.
Κάντε κι εσείς ανακύκλωση. Ρίξτε αλουμινένιες, λευκοσιδηρές, πλαστικές, γυάλινες και χάρτινες συσκευασίες στους μπλε κάδους ανακύκλωσης, γιατί τίποτα δεν πάει χαμένο. Σύστημα ανακύκλωσης εγκεκριμένο από το Υπουργείο Περιβάλλοντος.
Η μετακίνηση στην πόλη της Θεσσαλονίκης άλλαξε. Μέσω της πλατφόρμας www.mobithes.gr ο χρήστης ορίζοντας την αφετηρία και τον τελικό προορισμό του επιλέγει με ποιο μέσο θα μετακινηθεί. Την γρηγορότερη, την περιβαλλοντικά φιλικότερη ή την οικονομικότερη διαδρομή. Μέσω της πλατφόρμας ή των πινακίδων μεταβλητών μηνυμάτων που λαμβάνουν πληροφορίες από το νέο σύστημα διαχείρισης κυκλοφορίας και συμβάντων, ο πολίτης ενημερώνεται σε πραγματικό χρόνο για την κατάσταση της κυκλοφορίας στο οδικό δίκτυο. Στο κέντρο αστικής κινητικότητας που λειτουργεί στο Δημαρχείο μπορεί να ενημερωθεί και να σχεδιάσει τη διαδρομή του. Είσαι ένα κλικ μακριά. Μετακινήσου γρήγορα και έξυπνα στην πόλη σου, βελτιώνοντας την ποιότητα ζωής, προστατεύοντας το περιβάλλον.
Πού ταξιδεύεις? Σε ποια σύννεφα χορεύεις? Gonna be there? Are you sure you're gonna call back when I'm calling up and not up? Did you know that I'm sick? Did you think I would quit? Did you think I would home? I'm love sick. Did you hear it? It's bone. I'm all down. Can we make it up? I'm love sick. Can't you hear it's bone? Like my heart is quick. I'm love sick. Can't you hear it's bone? Oh, down. Let me make it up.
Today our destination is Ceuta, the crossroads of cultures in the northernmost part of Africa. In today's episode we'll be seeing indescribable starfish. We'll be taking part in the St. Antonio Abad procession. We'll be diving together with hundreds of spider crabs. We'll be enjoying the first-class gastronomy of the city, and finally we'll get to see some spectacular coral at more than 50 meters down. Where the impetuous Atlantic and the mild Mediterranean meet is Ceuta, a Spanish enclave on African soil. And in the waters nearby, we are going to be diving for the next few days. Hi, how are you all? I was expecting you. I'm Juan Carlos. How was the trip? The ship was okay? You enjoyed the crossing of the straits? Good. The advantages we have in Ceuta is that there are two bays. We can dive in the North Bay and the South Bay, and we can cross through the San Felipe Moat, which only takes a moment. The farthest dive point is 10 minutes maximum by boat, and we'll very probably be going to Benzu, as it's the closest part to the Atlantic and the narrowest. There's an enormous variety of coral. Later we'll be off to Ciclón de Tierra, a rock 12 meters high above water, and dropping down to 37 meters below where there is abundant red coral carpeted by Gorgonia. After that, in the South Bay, we'll be visiting a Gorgonia paradise called La Preciada, and to see the fat stone, if time allows. Things couldn't sound better. We are in for some great dives. We set off on the club boat and head for open sea. We leave port by crossing the San Felipe Moat. It is quite spectacular. The dive masters, Francis and Juan Carlos, come along with us to La Preciada, a diving zone in the eastern part of Ceuta. Francis describes how the immersion will be. We check over our gear and splash into the water. We descend directly to nearly 40 meters depth. Here on the seabed, rocky mounds abound, all full of life. Coralline-like species dominate and cover every inch of the walls. This unusual abundance is thanks to high productivity, in turn caused by the meeting of the Atlantic and the Mediterranean. Our dive master signals to us. He wants to show us this odd Gorgonia. It's known as whip Gorgonia, an Elicella paraplexoroides. It's a fairly rare species and is found along northern Africa. It's mainly to be found below 50 meters, but here it can be seen in shallower water. Next door to this example is a wonderful false black coral, with its polyps fully opened. We could spend the whole dive time just here, in 1 square meter, but we are curious and push on. A Unicella laviata now catches our eye. It's a species of Gorgonia belonging to the Atlantic, but manages to penetrate into the Mediterranean via the Gibraltar Straits. We're clearly diving in a very unique place. It would be difficult to find so many varieties and examples of Gorgonia in other parts of Mare Nostrum. We bump into another whip Gorgonia with its polyps fully extended, as the current is now stronger. But for weird animals, how about this spectacular Astropartus mediterraneus? An unseasoned diver could observe it for hours without knowing what it was. It's an Ophiura, an echinoderm related to the starfish. As we approach, we see 5 arms that divide up into more and more and more, until the whole effect is extremely confusing, yet beautiful. They normally live deeper down, but we are in luck yet again, as in Thuta they exist in more accessible zones for divers. We push on until we find an anchor covered by colonies of Astroides calicularis coral. We can also see several good-sized spider crabs moving nervously over it. Unfortunately, at this depth, the air in our tanks runs out very fast. We'll have to wait another day to spy in more detail on the life of the spider crab. Ceuta lies on a small peninsula in the Gibraltar Strait. It has been part of Spain since the 16th century. And although it is in Africa, the place is very much like any other European city. But this is only the first impression, because Ceuta is really a melting pot of races and cultures. 4 different religions cohabit peacefully here. The Muslim mosques around Ceuta share space with a Hindu temple, which is the first to be built on Spanish soil. And though the Catholic churches predominate, such as the Cathedral of Nuestra Señora de la Asunción, synagogues serve the Jewish population too. The life and economy of Ceuta revolves around the huge port, the principal gateway to Africa from Europe. It was so centuries ago, when the moat of the royal wall was the only entrance to the city. Today, this same moat is the fastest way to reach the beaches on either side of the rock. But we shouldn't forget we are on strategically located territory that has been desired for hundreds of years by North Africans and Europeans alike. This is obvious as soon as one gets here. The fortifications and other defensive structures abound around the city and the outskirts. One of them, the Desnarigado Fort, houses an interesting military museum well worth visiting.